Diane Harper's hand trembled as she gripped the armrest of her wheelchair, staring at the empty seats around her in the deserted airport terminal. At 52 years old, she'd built a healthcare empire worth $50 million, commanded boardrooms across 3 continents, and revolutionized hospital technology. But tonight, watching families embrace around her while her phone stayed silent, she finally asked herself the question she'd avoided for 20 years. What was it all for? Then, a small voice shattered her carefully constructed world. "Miss, why doesn't anybody love you?" Before we continue, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever achieved everything you thought you wanted, only to realize you'd lost what mattered most? Drop a comment with your city, and let's see how far this story reaches. Because what happened next didn't just change Diane's life, it challenged everything she believed about success, family, and second chances. Diane's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard with mechanical precision, the glow of the screen reflecting in her wire-rimmed glasses. Around her, Denver International Airport's Terminal B had transformed from bustling chaos to eerie quiet as the night deepened. Her flight to Chicago, delayed 3 hours, now had emptied the gate area until she sat alone in a sea of empty blue chairs. She refreshed her email for the 100th time. Nothing. No messages from her executive team celebrating today's acquisition. No calls from her brother checking in. Not even a spam email to break the monotony of her inbox's silence. "Marcus, I'm hungry." A child's voice cut through the white noise of distant announcements and the hum of floor cleaners. Diane glanced up briefly. A black man in his early 40s stood near the windows, tall and lean, with carpenter's hands and tired eyes. Beside him, a little girl with cornrowed hair and a pink backpack bounced on her toes. "I know, baby girl." He said, his voice gentle but worn thin. "They said another hour. We can get something from the vending machine." "But I want real food. And that lady over there looks lonely." Diane's attention snapped back to her screen, but her fingers had stopped typing. She could feel the child staring at her. "Zoe, don't bother people." "I'm not bothering. I'm just looking." "That's still bothering. Come on, let's find those vending machines." But the little girl didn't move. "Daddy, why is that lady all by herself? Doesn't she have any friends?" The question hit Diane like a physical blow. Her breath caught, her hands stilled completely on the keyboard. "Zoe Marie Johnson, that's enough." "But it's sad. She's just sitting there working and nobody's talking to her and... Zoe." Diane closed her laptop slowly. The little girl was still staring at her with those wide, concerned eyes, the kind of unfiltered honesty that only children possessed. The kind that saw through expensive suits and corporate armor straight to the loneliness underneath. "It's all right," Diane heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange rusty from disuse outside of business meetings. "She's just curious." The man Marcus approached with his daughter embarrassment coloring his face. "I'm sorry, ma'am. She's 6 and hasn't quite grasped the concept of indoor thoughts." "I have indoor thoughts," Zoe protested. "I just thought this one was important." Diane felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. When was the last time she'd smiled at something that wasn't a profit margin? "What's your name?" "Zoe Johnson." "I'm 6 3/4. What's yours?" "Diane Harper." "That's a pretty name. Are you rich? You have really nice jewelry." "Zoe." Marcus looked mortified. But Diane laughed, actually laughed, a sound that felt foreign in her own throat. "Yes, I suppose I am. Does that bother you?" Zoe considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "No. But if you're rich, why are you all alone?" "Rich people in movies always have lots of people around them." The laughter died in Diane's throat. The little girl had asked the question Diane had been avoiding for 2 decades. The question her therapist had tried to broach. The question her ex-husband had screamed at her during their divorce. The question her own reflection asked her every morning. "That's a very good question," Diane said quietly. Marcus shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. We should get going. I'm sorry for bothering you. You're not bothering me. The words came out more forcefully than Diane intended. She softened her tone. Really? I've been staring at spreadsheets for 3 hours. A conversation with an honest person is refreshing. I'm very honest, Zoe announced. My teacher says sometimes I'm too honest, but Daddy says honesty is important. Your daddy's right. Diane studied Marcus properly now. His jeans were worn but clean. His flannel shirt had been pressed carefully. His hands bore calluses and old scars, the hands of someone who worked with them. But his eyes held something else. Intelligence, dignity, and a bone-deep exhaustion that Diane recognized because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. I'm Marcus Johnson, he said, extending his hand. And I apologize again for my daughter's interrogation. Diane shook his hand. His grip was firm, but careful, the handshake of someone conscious of his own strength. Don't apologize for raising an observant child. The world needs more people who notice when someone's sitting alone. Are you traveling for work? Marcus asked, clearly trying to steer the conversation to safer territory. Board meeting in Chicago tomorrow morning. Sterling Healthcare Technologies. We're finalizing an acquisition. The words felt hollow even as she said them. What about you? Starting over, Marcus said simply. New job in Chicago. Zoe starts first grade next week. We're moving in with Aunt Evelyn, Zoe added. She makes the best sweet potato pie in the whole world. Daddy says we need family close by now. There was a story there Diane could tell. A weight in the way Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. A practiced brightness in Zoe's voice that suggested she'd been coached on how to talk about difficult things. Family is important, Diane said, though the words felt like ash in her mouth. Her own family consisted of a brother who sent birthday cards through his assistant and parents who measured their love in stock portfolios. Do you have family in Chicago? Zoe asked. No. Do you have family anywhere? Diane opened her mouth, closed it. What could she say? That yes, technically she had family, but they were strangers who shared her DNA. That her closest relationship was with her assistant who was paid handsomely to care about her schedule. It's complicated, she finally said. Zoe frowned. That's what grown-ups say when the answer is sad. Marcus put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. Zoe, that's enough questions. But Diane found herself saying, she's right. The answer is sad. The announcement crackled overhead. Flight 2847 to Chicago would be delayed another hour due to mechanical issues. Zoe groaned dramatically. This is taking forever. I know, baby, but we'll get there. Can we at least get food now? Real food. Marcus checked his phone, and Diane saw him quickly calculate something, probably stretching his budget to cover an overpriced airport meal. She recognized that look. She'd worn it herself 25 years ago when she'd been a broke graduate student eating ramen for dinner. There's a decent restaurant near Gate C, Diane said. Would you like to join me? My treat. Marcus stiffened slightly. That's kind of you, but please, Diane interrupted. She heard the desperation in her own voice and tried to moderate it. I haven't had a real conversation with someone in months. Everything in my life is transactional. Board meetings, investor calls, contract negotiations. I'd really appreciate the company. Marcus studied her face, and Diane felt herself being evaluated. She wondered what he saw. A lonely corporate executive, a wealthy woman condescending to share a meal, or maybe hopefully just another person trying to make a connection in a transient space. Can we, Daddy? Zoe tugged his hand. Please, I promise I'll eat all my vegetables. When have you ever eaten all your vegetables? Marcus said, but his voice had warmed. Tonight could be the first time. Marcus looked at Diane again. Are you sure? I'm sure. Then we'd be grateful. Thank you. As they made their way through the terminal, Zoe positioned herself between Diane's wheelchair and her father, chattering about everything she saw. "Look at that plane. It's so big. Do you fly on big planes like that, Miss Diane? I've only been on a plane twice. Once when we went to see Grandma before she went to heaven, and now. Daddy says Chicago has really tall buildings. Do you live in a tall building?" "I do," Diane said, navigating around a floor cleaning machine. "The 42nd floor. That's like a tower. Are you a princess?" Diane laughed. "No, just a businesswoman." "You could be a princess if you wanted. You're pretty enough." "Zoe," Marcus warned. "What she is." "Thank you, Zoe," Diane said. "That's very kind." The restaurant was one of those generic airport places with overpriced burgers and wilted salads. But when they settled into a booth, Diane felt something she hadn't experienced in years: comfortable. Not networking comfortable or business dinner comfortable. Actually comfortable. Marcus helped Zoe with her menu, pointing out options and quietly explaining prices when she wanted the most expensive item. "The chicken fingers come with fries and cost less, baby." "But I want the pasta." "I know, but the chicken fingers are good too." Diane watched this gentle negotiation and felt something twist in her chest. When was the last time someone had cared about her preferences? When was the last time anyone had negotiated with her about anything other than contracts and stock options? "Get the pasta, Zoe," Diane said. "And Marcus, please order whatever you'd like. I mean it." Marcus looked uncomfortable, but nodded. "Thank you, that's very generous." When the server came, Diane ordered for all of them, noting Marcus's visible relief when he didn't have to calculate the total. She ordered wine for herself and asked for chocolate milk for Zoe without being asked. "You have kids?" Marcus asked after the server left. "No, never had time." The words came out more bitter than she intended. "It's never too late," Marcus said gently. "I'm 52 years old. I think that ship has sailed." "My Aunt Evelyn adopted 3 kids when she was 58, Marcus said. "She says age is just a number when it comes to love." "Your Aunt Evelyn sounds wise." "She is. She's also stubborn as hell and makes the best peach cobbler you've ever tasted." "Daddy said a bad word," Zoe announced gleefully. "That I did. Don't repeat it." "I won't. Miss Diane, do you have a husband?" "Zoe." "What I'm just asking." Diane felt herself smile despite the personal nature of the question. "I did once, a long time ago. We divorced 15 years ago." "Why?" "Zoe Marie Johnson." "It's okay," Diane said. "We divorced because I worked too much and he wanted a wife who came home for dinner. He was right to leave." The admission hung in the air. Diane hadn't said those words out loud before. Not to her therapist. Not to her friends, what few she had left. But sitting here with a stranger and his 6-year-old daughter, the truth had simply fallen out. "That's sad," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "Daddy always comes home for dinner, even when he's really tired." "That's because you're worth coming home to," Diane said, and meant it. Marcus's eyes met hers across the table, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. 2 people who'd made very different choices, but somehow ended up in the same airport, both running from something and towards something else. "What do you do for work?" Diane asked, grateful for the subject change. "I'm a carpenter. Specialized restoration work mostly. Historic buildings, churches, old homes. I focus on accessibility modifications, making beautiful spaces work for everyone." Diane's interest sharpened. "Accessibility?" "Yeah. My sister had a stroke 3 years ago. Watching her struggle with a house that wasn't designed for her needs, that changed everything for me. Building codes are minimums, you know. They're not about optimal living. They're about liability protection." "I know exactly what you mean," Diane said, leaning forward. "My penthouse cost $3 million and was supposedly fully ADA compliant. But the designers never actually lived in a wheelchair. The kitchen counters are too high. The master bathroom is a joke. The closet design makes getting dressed an Olympic sport. Let me guess they gave you the standard grab bars in the shower and called it accessible, and lowered one section of counter that's completely useless for actual food prep, because they measured for minimum reach distance instead of optimal working height. Exactly. Marcus's face had lit up with professional passion, and Diane found herself mirroring his enthusiasm. When was the last time she'd talked to someone who actually understood her frustrations? Her contractors had all nodded politely, and then done exactly what the regulations required, nothing more. Their food arrived, and as Zoe dug into her pasta with single-minded determination, Marcus pulled out his phone. "Can I show you something?" "Of course." He scrolled through photos showing her a bathroom renovation he'd done for his sister. "See how the shower controls are positioned here, accessible from both standing and seated positions. And the counter height adjusts hydraulically. She can cook at whatever level works for her energy that day." Diane studied the photos with growing excitement. "This is brilliant. Most contractors just tell me it can't be done. Most contractors don't want to think creatively. Custom solutions take time and effort. I'd pay for that time and effort." Marcus looked up from his phone. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a consultation. Fly to Denver next weekend, take a look at my penthouse, tell me what's possible. I'll pay your standard rate plus travel expenses." "I don't have a standard rate for consultations. I've never done one." "Then we'll figure it out together. What's your going rate for carpentry work?" $75 an hour. I'll pay you $200 an hour plus first-class flights and hotel for the weekend. Bring Zoe if you'd like. I have plenty of space." Marcus stared at her. "That's too much." "It's standard consulting rates for specialized expertise, and honestly, Marcus, I'm tired of hiring contractors who don't understand what I actually need. You get it. That's rare. That's valuable." "Daddy, you should say yes." Zoe chimed in, tomato sauce on her chin. "Then I can see the Princess Tower." Marcus wiped his daughter's face with a napkin, clearly thinking. "Let me be honest with you, Diane. I'm a single father starting over in a new city. I need this Chicago job. I can't just fly to Denver on a weekend when I'm supposed to be settling us into a new place. What if I flew you both out in 2 weeks, give you time to get Zoe started in school, figure out your new job schedule? Miss Diane really wants you to fix her house, Daddy." "It's not just about the house," Diane said quietly. She met Marcus's eyes. "I haven't had a real conversation with someone in longer than I can remember. Everyone wants something from me. Investors want returns, employees want direction, board members want growth. But you two, you just wanted company for dinner. That's worth more than you know." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Zoe had gone back to her pasta, humming softly to herself, oblivious to the weight of the conversation happening over her head. 2 weeks, Marcus finally said. "I'll need to check with Aunt Evelyn about watching Zoe." "Bring her. I'll book you a suite at the Brown Palace. There's an excellent kids' room service menu." "You don't have to. I want to. Please, let me do this." Marcus studied her face again, and Diane wondered what he was looking for. Whatever it was, he seemed to find it. "Okay, thank you. That's very generous." They exchanged contact information, and as they finished their meal, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Zoe talked about her new school and her excitement about making friends. Marcus described his aunt's South Side neighborhood with obvious affection. Diane found herself sharing stories about building her company from nothing, starting in a garage 25 years ago with borrowed equipment and student loans. "You built Sterling Healthcare from scratch?" Marcus asked, impressed. "Every line of code, every client pitch, every investor meeting. It nearly killed me, honestly. But I thought that was what success looked like, sacrificing everything for the company." "Was it worth it?" The question hung in the air. Diane looked at her phone, still silent, on the table. Looked at Marcus, whose phone had buzzed 3 times with messages from his aunt checking in. Looked at Zoe, who was using her last piece of bread to mop up sauce, completely secure in her father's love and attention. "Ask me in 20 years, Diane said. but she already knew the answer. The boarding announcement crackled through the terminal. Their flight was finally ready. As they gathered their things, Zoe suddenly grabbed Diane's hand. "Can you sit with us on the plane? You shouldn't be alone." Diane felt her throat tighten. "That's sweet, but you're probably in a different section." "I have 3 first-class seats," she heard herself say. "My assistant always books extra space. Would you like to join me?" Marcus started to protest, but Diane cut him off. "Please, I fly first class alone 50 times a year. This time I'd like the company." Something in her voice must have convinced him, because Marcus nodded. "If you're sure." "I'm sure." As they made their way to the gate, Zoe walked between them, holding both their hands, chattering about clouds and whether planes had bedrooms. Diane felt something she hadn't experienced in years: connection. Not networking, not strategic relationship building, just simple human connection. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, the silence of her phone didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like space for something new, something real, something that had started with one simple, devastating question: why doesn't anybody love you? Diane didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time in 20 years, she wanted to find one. The first-class cabin felt different with company. Diane had flown this route dozens of times, always alone with her laptop and a glass of wine she never finished. But now, Zoe pressed her face against the window, gasping at every light below, while Marcus helped secure their belongings in the overhead compartment. "I can see our house from here," Zoe announced, though they were still on the ground. "That's Denver, baby. Our house is in Phoenix, remember?" "Oh, well, I can see somebody's house." The flight attendant appeared with practiced efficiency. "Ms. Harper, your usual Chardonnay." "Actually, could we get apple juice for the little one? And coffee for—" Diane looked at Marcus. "Coffee's great. Black, please." The attendant smiled clearly, surprised to see Diane traveling with companions. "Of course, I'll be right back." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Zoe's excitement turned to nervousness. She gripped her armrest, her small knuckles going white. "You okay, baby girl?" Marcus asked softly. "My tummy feels funny." "That's normal. It'll go away once we're in the air. Promise?" "Promise." But Zoe reached across Marcus and grabbed Diane's hand. "Can you hold my hand too, just in case?" Diane felt something crack in her chest. When was the last time someone had reached for her hand? Not in a business handshake, not in obligatory greeting, but in genuine need for comfort. "Of course I can," Diane said, squeezing gently. They sat like that through takeoff, Zoe holding both their hands, creating a bridge between two strangers who'd met just hours ago. As the plane lifted off, Zoe's grip relaxed and her face split into a huge grin. "We're flying, Daddy. We're really flying." "We sure are." "Miss Diane, do you fly all the time?" "Pretty much. Sometimes twice a week." "Don't you get lonely?" There it was again. That childlike directness that cut through all pretense. Diane could deflect, could give the practiced answer about how productive flying was for catching up on work. Instead, she told the truth. "Yes, I get very lonely." Marcus looked at her over Zoe's head, and their eyes met. He didn't offer empty platitudes or try to fix it. He just nodded, understanding in his expression. "My daddy gets lonely too sometimes," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "I hear him crying at night when he thinks I'm asleep, but I don't say anything because he doesn't want me to know." Marcus's face went carefully blank, but Diane saw his jaw tighten. "Zoe." "It's okay, Daddy. Miss Diane understands. She's lonely too." The flight attendant returned with drinks, breaking the moment's intensity. Zoe accepted her apple juice with both hands and immediately started telling Diane about her school, her best friend Maya, who she was leaving behind in Phoenix, and her worries about making new friends in Chicago. "What if nobody likes me?" "Impossible," Diane said firmly. "You're smart, funny, and you ask the important questions. Any kid would be lucky to be your friend. You really think so? I know so. Zoe beamed and turned back to the window. Marcus leaned slightly toward Diane, his voice low. Thank you. She's been anxious about the move, but she tries to be brave. She's remarkable. You're doing an incredible job with her. Some days I'm not sure. I'm making it up as I go. Aren't we all? Marcus smiled, but there was sadness in it. Her mother knew what she was doing. I'm just trying not to screw up too badly. How long has it been? 2 years. Cancer, ovarian. By the time they caught it. He stopped, glanced at Zoe to make sure she wasn't listening. 6 months from diagnosis to gone. Zoe was 4. Young enough to adapt, old enough to remember. I'm so sorry. Thank you. We're doing okay, most days. The move to Chicago is about more than just the job. It's about having family close. My wife's sister, Aunt Evelyn, she's been begging us to come. And I realized I can't do this alone anymore. Diane thought about her own isolation, her choice to have no one close, no one to lean on. That's brave. Admitting you need help. Brave or desperate. Marcus sipped his coffee. Some days I can't tell the difference. What's the job in Chicago? Lead carpenter for Southside Historic Restoration. They're renovating churches from the 20s and 30s, trying to preserve the original craftsmanship while making them functional for modern use. It's good work, meaningful. That's the kind of work you love, the historic restoration. Marcus's face lit up. There's something about old buildings. The people who built them had pride, you know. Every joint, every piece of molding, every detail was done with intention. Modern construction is efficient, but it's soulless. These old buildings have stories. Like people, Diane said quietly. Exactly like people. The buildings that last are the ones built with care, even if they need some restoration along the way. They fell into comfortable conversation, talking about Marcus's work, Diane's company, their different paths to their current lives. Zoe eventually fell asleep against the window, her breathing soft and even. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast, Marcus said, watching his daughter sleep. But something about you she just knew. Knew what? That you needed us as much as we needed you. Diane felt tears prick her eyes. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows what loneliness looks like. Marcus turned to face her more fully. Can I ask you something? And you can tell me to mind my business if you want. Go ahead. Why are you really flying to Chicago? I don't mean the board meeting. I mean, why are you on this plane alone at 10 o'clock at night when you clearly have the resources to send someone else? Diane was quiet for a long moment. Because if I don't go myself, if I don't keep moving, I have to stop and think about my life. And if I think about my life, I have to admit that I spent 25 years building something that doesn't keep me warm at night. The company, the empire, the reputation, the bank account that has more zeros than I can spend in 3 lifetimes. None of it matters when you're eating room service alone in a hotel room for the 200th time. But you're successful. I'm successful and miserable. And I didn't realize it until your daughter asked me why I was sitting alone. Diane wiped her eyes. Sorry, I don't usually unload on strangers. We're not strangers anymore. Not really. No, I suppose we're not. The plane hit turbulence and Zoe stirred but didn't wake. Marcus adjusted her blanket, his movements practiced and gentle. Diane watched him and felt a longing so acute it was physical. Can I ask you something now? She said. Fair's fair. Why did you let Zoe come talk to me? Most parents would have pulled their kid away immediately. Marcus thought about this. Honestly, because she was right. You did look sad and lonely, and I figured maybe you needed someone to notice that as much as we needed someone to be kind to us. Has it been hard? Finding people who are kind. Harder than you'd think. People either avoid single fathers like we're contagious, or they pity us. Neither one feels good. But you didn't do either. You just treated us like people." "You are people, good people." "So are you, Diane. I don't think you believe that, but you are." They talked until Zoe woke up an hour later, groggy and disoriented. Marcus got her some water and crackers, while Diane answered emails on her phone, though for the first time in years, she resented the intrusion of work into her time. "Are we almost there?" Zoe asked, rubbing her eyes. "About another hour," Marcus said. "Can we all have breakfast together tomorrow before Miss Diane's meeting?" "Baby, Miss Diane probably has." "Actually," Diane interrupted, "I don't have anything until 10. Breakfast sounds perfect." Zoe clapped her hands. "Can we go somewhere with pancakes?" "I know just the place," Diane said, already texting her assistant to make reservations. As they descended into Chicago, Diane felt something she hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. Not for the board meeting or the acquisition deal, but for breakfast with a 6-year-old who asked hard questions and a single father who understood what it meant to be lonely in a crowd. The captain's voice crackled over the speaker, announcing their arrival. Zoe pressed against the window again, watching the city lights grow closer. "It's so pretty," she breathed. "Wait until you see it in daylight," Marcus said. "Is Aunt Evelyn waiting for us?" She texted 3 times during the flight. "She's definitely waiting. I can't wait to see her." As they prepared to land, Diane found herself dreading the moment when they'd part ways. She'd go to her luxury hotel order room service she wouldn't eat and prepare for a meeting that suddenly felt meaningless. They'd go home to family and connection and love. The plane touched down smoothly. Zoe cheered. Other passengers began gathering their belongings with the usual rush, but their section was quieter, more reluctant. "Thank you," Marcus said as they waited to deplane. "For dinner, for the flight, for treating us like we mattered. You do matter. More than you know. Same goes for you, Diane." They made their way through the jetway, Zoe skipping ahead full of renewed energy. At the gate, a small black woman with silver hair and the most welcoming smile Diane had ever seen stood holding a sign that said, "Welcome home, Marcus and Zoe." "Aunt Evelyn!" Zoe shrieked and ran straight into the woman's arms. Evelyn swept Zoe up, spinning her around despite being at least 70 years old. Then she pulled Marcus into a fierce embrace, holding on long enough that Diane looked away, feeling like an intruder on their reunion. "And who's this?" Evelyn asked, turning her attention to Diane. "This is Diane Harper," Marcus said. "We met at the Denver airport. She bought us dinner and let us sit with her in first class." Evelyn studied Diane with eyes that seemed to see everything. Then she smiled and pulled Diane into a hug before she could protest. "Any friend of Marcus and Zoe is family," Evelyn said firmly. "You eaten dinner?" "We ate on the plane, Auntie," Marcus said. "Airplane food doesn't count. I made gumbo. You're all coming home with me." "Oh, I couldn't," Diane started. "Wasn't a question, honey. You got somewhere better to be." Diane thought about her hotel room, the room service menu, the silence. "No, I don't." "Then it's settled. Marcus, get her bags." And that was how Diane Harper, CEO of Sterling Healthcare Technologies, found herself in the back of a 15-year-old Buick heading to the south side of Chicago with a family she'd met 3 hours ago, about to eat homemade gumbo in a stranger's kitchen. It should have felt crazy, reckless, completely outside her carefully controlled life. Instead, it felt like the first sane thing she'd done in years. Evelyn's house was a narrow brick 3-story in a neighborhood where every porch had people sitting on it despite the late hour. Music drifted from open windows. Children played tag under streetlights. The smell of dinner cooking in a dozen different kitchens mingled in the warm night air. "Home," Evelyn announced, pulling into a driveway barely wide enough for the car. "Your apartment's on the 2nd floor, Marcus. I got it all ready for you." Inside the house smelled like heaven, spices and herbs and something baking. Photos covered every available surface, 3 generations of family staring out from frames. The furniture was worn but immaculate, the kind of home that prioritized comfort over style. "Sit," Evelyn commanded, pointing Diane toward the kitchen table. "You too, Marcus. Zoe, baby, go wash your hands." Within minutes, bowls of gumbo appeared along with cornbread that was still warm and sweet tea in mismatched glasses. Diane couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten in someone's actual home, much less a meal this lovingly prepared. "This is incredible," she said after the first bite. "Family recipe," Evelyn said with satisfaction. "My grandmother taught my mother taught me, and I'm teaching this one." She nodded at Marcus. "Lord knows he needs to know how to cook for more than one. Auntie, I can cook. You can make chicken nuggets and mac and cheese from a box. That's not cooking." Zoe giggled. "Daddy burned spaghetti once." "How do you burn spaghetti?" Evelyn demanded. "In my defense, Zoe had a fever and I was distracted," Marcus said, but he was smiling. Diane watched them tease each other with the ease of people who loved deeply, and she felt that ache again, the recognition of something she'd given up without realizing its value. "So, Diane," Evelyn said, turning her attention fully on her, "what brings you to Chicago?" "Board meeting tomorrow morning." "What kind of business?" "Healthcare technology. We develop software systems for hospitals." Evelyn nodded. "Important work. My late husband spent his last months in the hospital. Those computer systems made everything easier for the nurses." "I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what we're trying to do." "But—" Diane paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. "But what?" "But something's not sitting right with you. I can see it in your eyes. Success doesn't feel like you thought it would." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Auntie, that's pretty personal." "It's okay," Diane said. She set down her spoon. "You're right. I built a company worth millions, but I'm eating alone in hotels most nights. I have employees, not friends, business associates, not family. And I didn't realize how empty it all was until your niece asked me why I was sitting alone." Evelyn reached across the table and patted Diane's hand. "Honey, success without love is just expensive loneliness. My Charles used to say that. He was a bus driver for 40 years, never made more than $30,000 a year, but he was the richest man I knew because he invested in people, not stocks. I wish I'd known that 20 years ago. You know it now. That's what matters." Evelyn stood and started clearing dishes. "You staying in a hotel tonight?" "The Ritz-Carlton downtown." Evelyn made a dismissive sound. "Hotels are lonely. You should stay here. The third-floor guest room is empty." "Oh, I couldn't impose. What did I tell you about that?" "Wasn't a question. Besides, Marcus needs to head downtown for his meeting with the restoration company tomorrow morning. You two can share a ride." Diane looked at Marcus, who shrugged. "Once Aunt Evelyn makes up her mind, resistance is futile." "I can cancel the hotel," Diane heard herself saying. "Good. That's settled then. Zoe, show Miss Diane where the bathroom is so she can wash up for bed." As Zoe led her upstairs, chattering about the house and her new school, and whether Diane had ever seen a real live squirrel, Diane sent a text to her assistant, "Cancel the Ritz reservation. I'm staying with friends." The word felt strange to type. Friends. But as she followed Zoe up the narrow stairs, listening to the sound of Marcus and Evelyn talking in the kitchen below, she realized it was true. She'd made friends, real ones. The kind who invited you into their home without agenda or expectation. The kind who saw your loneliness and offered gumbo and a guest room. The kind she'd forgotten existed. The third-floor guest room was small but immaculate, with a double bed covered in a quilt that looked handmade and lace curtains that moved in the breeze from the open window. It was nothing like her usual hotel suites with their impersonal luxury and room service menus. It was perfect. Zoe sat on the bed while Diane unpacked her overnight bag. "Miss Diane?" "Yes, sweetheart." "I'm glad we met you. Daddy smiles more when you're around." Diane felt her throat tighten. "I'm glad we met you too. You made me realize some important things." "Like what?" "Like I've been so busy building a company that I forgot to build a life." Zoe thought about this with her characteristic seriousness. That's sad. But you can fix it now, right? I hope so. You can. Daddy says it's never too late to fix things if you really want to. A knock on the doorframe made them both look up. Marcus stood there, Zoe's pajamas in hand. Time for bed, baby girl. Miss Diane needs to rest. But we're having important talks. You can have important talks tomorrow at breakfast. Say goodnight. Zoe gave Diane a fierce hug. Good night. Don't be lonely tonight. Okay? We're right downstairs if you need us. After they left, Diane sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. Footsteps on the stairs. Water running. Evelyn's voice telling Zoe a story. Marcus's deeper voice responding. The sounds of family, of home, of the life she'd given up for conference calls and profit margins. She pulled out her phone and looked at her schedule for tomorrow. Board meeting at 10. Investor call at 2. Flight back to Denver at 6. Back to her empty penthouse and her carefully constructed isolation. But first breakfast with Zoe. And Marcus. And maybe, if she was very lucky, the beginning of something that felt like belonging. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thank you for today. Zoe hasn't been this happy since before her mom died. You gave us both a gift. Diane typed back. You gave me one too. See you at breakfast. She lay down on the handmade quilt, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house full of people who cared about each other, and for the first time in 20 years, she didn't feel alone. Diane woke to the smell of bacon and the sound of Zoe's laughter floating up through the floorboards. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it came back: Evelyn's guest room, the south side of Chicago. A life so different from her own, it might as well have been another planet. She checked her phone. 6:30. Her assistant had sent 3 emails overnight about the board meeting. Diane scrolled through them, but the usual urgency felt distant, muted. Through the window she could see neighbors already out on their porches, coffee cups in hand, calling greetings to each other. When she made her way downstairs, she found Marcus at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Zoe set the table with exaggerated care, her tongue poking out in concentration. Good morning, Diane said from the doorway. Miss Diane? Zoe abandoned the silverware and ran over. Daddy's making his famous pancakes. They're the best in the whole world. Second best, Marcus corrected. Your mom's were the best. But yours are really good too, Daddy. Evelyn appeared from the back door, carrying fresh tomatoes from her garden. Morning, honey. Coffee's on the counter. Help yourself. Diane poured a cup and sat at the kitchen table watching this morning choreography with something like hunger. Marcus moved efficiently around the small kitchen, Zoe chattering non-stop about her dreams, Evelyn humming while she sliced tomatoes for something Diane couldn't identify yet. How'd you sleep? Marcus asked, sliding a stack of pancakes onto a plate. Better than I have in months, actually. That's what happens when you're surrounded by love instead of hotel walls. Evelyn said, not looking up from her cutting board. Sets the soul at ease. They gathered around the table, and Evelyn said grace, a simple prayer thanking God for safe travels and new friends and second chances. Diane felt her eyes burn with unexpected tears. These are incredible, she said after the first bite of pancake. Secret ingredient, Marcus said. Can't tell you or I'd have to kill you. Daddy. That's what they say in movies. You're not in a movie, you're in Aunt Evelyn's kitchen. Fair point. Diane's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, her CFO, with a question about the acquisition terms. She sent a quick reply and set it down. Big meeting today, Marcus asked. The biggest of my career, supposedly. We're finalizing the acquisition of MedTech Solutions. $50 million deal. Evelyn whistled low. That's a lot of zeros. It is. But, Evelyn said, that same perceptive look from last night. But I can't seem to care as much as I should. I've been working toward this deal for 18 months. It should feel like Christmas morning. Instead, it just feels like another Tuesday. Because it is another Tuesday, Evelyn said, spearing a piece of tomato with her fork. Numbers on a page don't keep you warm at night, honey. They don't laugh at your jokes or hold your hand when you're scared. Aunt Evelyn's really wise, Zoe informed Diane seriously. She knows everything. Not everything, baby, just the important things. Marcus checked his watch. We should probably head out soon. My meeting with the restoration company is at 9, and you need to be downtown by 10, right? Right. Diane felt a strange reluctance to leave this warm kitchen, this family that had absorbed her into their orbit so naturally. Can I come? Zoe asked. I want to see where Daddy's going to work. Not today, baby. You're going to stay with Aunt Evelyn and help her make cookies for your new school. Welcome to the neighborhood cookies, Evelyn explained. We're going to take them around this afternoon, introduce Zoe to all the kids on the block. That's a wonderful idea, Diane said. Old tradition. My mother did it when we moved here in '58. Now I do it for every new family. They cleaned up breakfast together, Diane finding herself at the sink next to Marcus, drying dishes while he washed. It felt domestic and strange, and utterly right. Thank you, she said quietly, for including me in this. I know I'm basically a stranger. You're not a stranger, not anymore. Marcus handed her a dripping plate. Besides, Zoe's decided you're part of the family now. No arguing with her when she makes up her mind. I wonder where she gets that from. Marcus grinned. No idea. In the car, Evelyn's Buick, which Marcus was borrowing, they drove through neighborhoods that showed Chicago's complexity. Vacant lots next to meticulously maintained homes. Corner stores with hand-painted signs. Churches with historic plaques. People waiting at bus stops heading to jobs that would pay them in hours what Diane made in minutes. Penny for your thoughts, Marcus said. I was just thinking about how different our worlds are. Are they, though? Marcus glanced at her. We both work hard, both trying to build something that matters, both learning that success doesn't look like we thought it would. I suppose that's true. The only difference is the number of zeros in our bank accounts. But loneliness costs the same whether you're broke or rich. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus said, Can I ask you something? Of course. What happened with your marriage, your family, your life before it became all about the company? Diane was quiet, watching the city pass by the window. I was 28 when I started Sterling Healthcare. Fresh out of business school, drowning in student loans, terrified I'd fail. I was married to Robert, my college sweetheart. He was supportive at first, proud even. What changed? I did. The company started growing faster than I expected. I worked 18-hour days, missed dinners, missed birthdays, missed our anniversary 3 years running. Robert kept saying he understood, but I could see him pulling away. Did you try to fix it? I told myself I would, after this pitch, after this launch, after this round of funding, but there was always something more important than going home. Diane's voice cracked slightly. One day, I came home at midnight and found his wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I can't compete with your first love. Meaning the company. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I was, honestly. Not then. I was relieved. He was the last thing tying me to a normal life, and once he was gone, I could work without guilt. My parents had already written me off as too focused on business to be a proper daughter. My brother stopped inviting me to family dinners because I never showed up. The company became everything because I'd let everything else fall away. Marcus pulled up to a red light and turned to look at her. And now I'm 52 years old, worth more money than I can spend, and I spent last night in a stranger's guest room because it was the first time in years someone invited me into their home. Diane wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, you didn't sign up for a therapy session. Hey. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. We all got our stuff. Mine just comes with a 6-year-old who asks uncomfortable questions. Diane laughed despite herself. She's remarkable. She is. Her mom would be proud of how she's turning out. They reached Marcus's destination first, an old stone church with scaffolding wrapped around its bell tower. The architectural details were stunning, even in disrepair. "This is beautiful," Diane said. "Built in 1924. Original woodwork, stained glass, the whole thing. My job is to restore it while making it accessible to everyone in the congregation." Marcus gathered his portfolio. "Some of the older members are resistant to changes. Think ramps and elevators will ruin the historic integrity. But you'll convince them." "I'll try. These buildings should be for everyone, not just the able-bodied." "Good luck." Marcus paused before getting out. "You're meeting the acquisition. Do you want it to go through?" The question caught Diane off guard. "I don't know anymore." "Then maybe that's your answer." He smiled. "I'll text you when I'm done. Maybe we can grab lunch before your flight." "I'd like that." She watched him walk toward the church, his portfolio under his arm, his stride confident. A man who knew his purpose and lived it. She envied that clarity. The driver took her downtown to the Sterling Healthcare offices, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that screamed success and corporate dominance. Her assistant met her in the lobby with coffee and a briefing folder. "Ms. Harper, everyone's waiting in the boardroom. Mr. Chen has been asking about the final terms. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes." "Of course. Also, your brother called. Said it was important." Diane felt a flash of irritation. When did Marcus ever call about anything important? "He said something about your parents wanting to discuss the acquisition. They're concerned about—" "Tell him I'll call back after the meeting." In the restroom, Diane checked her reflection. Power suit, perfect makeup hair in the severe bun that had become her signature. She looked like the CEO everyone expected, polished, professional, untouchable. She thought about Evelyn's kitchen. Zoe's sticky hug, Marcus's easy smile. She thought about eating pancakes at a crowded table and feeling more at home than she had in her $3 million penthouse. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe, sent from Marcus's phone, judging by the typing. "Miss Diane, I hope your meeting goes good. Daddy says you're very smart and brave. Love, Zoe." Diane stared at that message for a long moment. When was the last time someone had called her brave for anything other than a business decision? When was the last time someone had said they loved her even in a 6-year-old's casual way? She walked into the boardroom, where 12 people waited around a mahogany table that probably cost more than Evelyn's entire house. Robert Chen, the CEO of MedTech Solutions, stood to shake her hand. "Diane, wonderful to see you. Are we ready to make this official?" "Let's discuss the terms first," Diane said, taking her seat at the head of the table. For the next 2 hours, they negotiated details she'd already negotiated 3 times before. Every clause had been analyzed, every number verified. It was a good deal, solid return on investment, strong strategic fit, minimal risk. And Diane felt absolutely nothing. She went through the motions, asked the right questions, pushed back on the appropriate points. But the whole time, part of her mind was in a South Side kitchen, listening to Zoe's laughter, and Evelyn's wisdom, and Marcus's quiet strength. "So we're agreed," Chen finally said. $50 million with the terms as outlined. Everyone looked at Diane. This was the moment she'd been building toward for 18 months. The moment that would cement Sterling Healthcare's position as the industry leader. The moment her board had been demanding. "I need 24 hours, Diane heard herself say. Silence. Her CFO's eyes widened. Chen's smile faltered. 24 hours, Chen repeated. "Diane, we've been negotiating for over a year. What could possibly need another day? I need to make sure this is the right move for my company." Diane stood. "I'll have an answer by this time tomorrow." "Diane, 24 hours, Robert. That's my final offer." She walked out of the boardroom, ignoring the stunned faces and the buzzing phones as people scrambled to understand what had just happened. Her assistant chased after her. "Ms. Harper, what should I tell the board?" "Tell them I'm thinking." "But the shareholders." "We'll survive one more day of uncertainty." Diane pressed the elevator button. Cancel my afternoon calls and my flight back to Denver. Where will you be if anyone needs you? Diane thought about that question. Where would she be? In a hotel room staring at spreadsheets, in a bar drinking alone, or somewhere else entirely, with friends, she said. Tell them I'm with friends. She texted Marcus, meeting over. Can I take you up on that lunch offer? His reply came immediately. Absolutely. There's a soul food place 2 blocks from the church. Best fried chicken in Chicago. 20 minutes later, Diane sat in a booth at Mabel's kitchen, surrounded by the lunch rush of working people, while Marcus studied the menu. How'd it go? He asked. I asked for 24 hours to decide. Marcus looked up. You did? Shocked myself honestly. What made you hesitate? Diane fidgeted with her napkin. I was sitting in that boardroom with 12 people who wanted the deal to happen, and all I could think about was Zoe asking me why I didn't have any friends. And I realized that if I do this deal, it just means more of the same. More hotels, more lonely dinners, more years of working towards something that doesn't actually make me happy. What would make you happy? I don't know. That's the problem. I've spent so long focusing on success that I forgot to figure out what I actually want from life. A waitress appeared, an older black woman with kind eyes and a notepad. What can I get you folks? 2 fried chicken plates, Marcus said. Extra cornbread and sweet tea. Coming right up, honey. After she left, Marcus leaned back in the booth. Can I tell you something about my wife? Please. Rachel was a teacher, 4th grade, made $38,000 a year and loved every minute of it. When she got sick, people kept telling her to fight to stay positive, to believe she'd beat it. But 3 months before she died, she told me something I'll never forget. Diane waited, throat tight. She said, Marcus, I don't regret a single day I spent in that classroom with those kids, but I regret every evening I stayed late grading papers instead of coming home to you and Zoe. I regret every weekend I spent on lesson plans instead of at the park, because work will replace you in a heartbeat, but your family never will. That's brutal. It was honest, and it changed everything for me. After she died, I could have thrown myself into work, used it to avoid the grief. Instead, I chose to be present for Zoe, to prioritize what matters. And yeah, sometimes it means turning down jobs or missing opportunities. But I've never regretted it. Their food arrived, generous plates of fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, and cornbread that was still warm. Diane took a bite and closed her eyes. Oh my God. Told you, Marcus said with satisfaction. Best in Chicago. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Diane said, Can I ask you something? Shoot. When you offered to consult on my penthouse, was that just professional interest, or was there something else? Marcus set down his fork. Honestly, both. The professional part is real. I'd love to work on a project like that. But the personal part is real too. You're interesting, Diane. You're successful and smart, and you've got this whole powerful CEO thing going on. But underneath it, you're just as lost as I was 2 years ago. Lost? Searching for something. I could see it in your eyes at the airport. Same look I had after Rachel died, like you'd achieved everything you set out to do and realized it wasn't enough. It's not, Diane said quietly. Nothing I've built means anything if I'm experiencing it alone. So change it. How? Start small. Say no to things that don't serve you. Say yes to things that scare you. Build connections with real people who don't want anything from you except your company. Marcus smiled, like breakfast with a 6-year-old who asks uncomfortable questions. Diane laughed. She's very good at that. She gets it from her mother. Rachel never let me hide from hard truths either. They finished lunch, and Marcus insisted on paying. You bought dinner last night. And they walked back to the church together. Workers were carrying materials inside, and Marcus needed to supervise some of the restoration work. Want to see the inside? He asked. It's pretty spectacular. I'd love to. The church interior took Diane's breath away. Soaring ceilings with exposed beams, stained glass windows that cast colored light across worn pews, intricate woodwork that spoke of craftsmanship from another era. This is incredible. Right. Look at these joints. Marcus ran his hand along a beam. No nails, no screws. Just perfectly fitted wood that's held for 100 years. And you're going to preserve all of this while making it accessible. See that choir loft? He pointed up. We're installing an elevator that looks like it's always been part of the building, and the front entrance, instead of a ramp, we're doing a gradual slope integrated into the landscaping. People in wheelchairs will be able to access everything without feeling like an afterthought. You really love this work. I do. It's not just about buildings. It's about making sure everyone belongs, everyone has access, everyone feels welcome. Marcus looked at her. Kind of like what you should do with your life. Excuse me. Make yourself accessible. Stop hiding behind your empire. Let people in. That's easier said than done. Everything worth doing is. A worker called Marcus over with a question about the stained glass restoration. Diane wandered through the church alone, thinking about Marcus's words. Her phone buzzed constantly, her CFO, her board members, her brother again. She ignored all of it. Instead, she texted Zoe. How are the cookies coming along? The response came quickly. Really good. We made chocolate chip and Aunt Evelyn says tomorrow we make sugar cookies. Can you stay for those too? Diane stared at that message. She could catch the evening flight back to Denver, get back to her normal life. Or she could do something completely unprecedented. She texted back, I'll try. Then she called her assistant. Clear my schedule for the rest of the week. The entire week. But Ms. Harper, you have. Cancel everything. Tell the board I'm taking personal time. Tell Chen I'll have my answer Monday morning. Are you all right? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. When Marcus finished with the workers, Diane was sitting in one of the pews, staring up at the stained glass. You okay? He asked, sliding in next to her. I just cleared my schedule for the rest of the week. Marcus's eyebrows rose. What? I don't know what I'm doing. I just know I can't go back to Denver and pretend last night didn't happen. Pretend meeting you and Zoe didn't shake something loose in me. What are you going to do instead? I have no idea. That's terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Want to help me pick out paint colors for Zoe's new room? Diane laughed, the sound echoing in the empty church. That's the most normal thing anyone's asked me to do in 20 years. Is that a yes? That's definitely a yes. They spent the afternoon at a hardware store debating shades of purple and whether Zoe would prefer butterflies or stars on her walls. Marcus showed Diane how to read paint samples and explained the difference between eggshell and satin finish. It was mundane and domestic, and Diane couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so content. Her phone kept buzzing. She kept ignoring it. They're going to think you've been kidnapped, Marcus said, as they loaded paint cans into the car. Let them. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that has nothing to do with business strategy or market share. I'm helping a friend paint his daughter's bedroom. That feels more important than any acquisition. Even a $50 million one. Especially a $50 million one. Back at Evelyn's house, they found Zoe covered in flour, proudly displaying 3 dozen cookies, cooling on racks. Miss Diane, you came back. Look what we made. Diane admired the cookies, which ranged from perfectly round to decidedly abstract. These are beautiful, Zoe. That one's for you. Zoe pointed to a slightly lopsided cookie with extra chocolate chips. I made it special. Diane felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. That's the best gift anyone's given me in a long time. It's just a cookie, Zoe said, confused. It's perfect, Diane insisted. That evening, they painted Zoe's room together, all 4 of them, with Zoe directing operations like a tiny general. Evelyn told stories about Marcus as a boy. Marcus told stories about Rachel, and Diane found herself sharing memories of her own childhood that she'd forgotten she had. "My mother used to make cookies too," she said carefully, edging around a window frame. "Every Christmas, sugar cookies shaped like stars and trees." "Does she still?" Zoe asked. "No, we don't really see each other anymore." "That's sad. Why not?" "Because I let work become more important than family, and by the time I realized my mistake, too much time had passed." "It's never too late," Evelyn said firmly. "Family is family. You pick up that phone and call your mother, hear me. It's been 5 years since we last spoke. Then you got 5 years of conversation to catch up on. Stop making excuses." Diane wanted to argue, to explain all the reasons why her relationship with her parents was complicated and irreparable. But Evelyn's expression brooked no argument. "Yes, ma'am," Diane said instead. Later, after Zoe had gone to bed and Marcus had headed upstairs to his new apartment to unpack, Diane sat on Evelyn's back porch, with a glass of sweet tea staring at her phone. Her mother's number was still in her contacts. Her finger hovered over it for a full minute before she pressed call. The phone rang 4 times. Diane was about to hang up when a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Mom, it's Diane." Silence. Then, "Diane. Yeah, it's me. I know it's been a while. I wanted to call. To talk. If you're willing." Another pause. Then her mother's voice, thick with emotion. "Oh, honey. I've been waiting 5 years for this call." Diane's hand shook as she held the phone to her ear. She could hear her mother breathing on the other end of the line, could almost see her in the Boston townhouse, probably sitting in the same wingback chair by the window where she'd always taken important calls. "I didn't think you'd answer," Diane said finally. "I almost didn't." Her mother's voice was careful, guarded. "Your brother said you were in Chicago for business. I assumed you were too busy to call." "I was supposed to be. But something happened." "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" The concern in her mother's voice caught Diane off guard. When had she started assuming her parents didn't care? "I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm confused and scared and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm fine." "That doesn't sound fine, Diane." "No, it really is. For the first time in years, I'm actually feeling something other than numb." Diane took a deep breath. "Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. For missing Christmas 5 years running. For not coming to Marcus's wedding. For choosing board meetings over family dinners. For becoming someone I don't even recognize anymore." The silence stretched so long Diane thought the call had dropped. Then her mother said, her voice breaking, "I'm sorry, too. For letting you drift away. For not fighting harder to stay in your life. For making you feel like you had to choose between success and family." "You didn't make me choose. I did that all on my own." "But we didn't stop you either. Your father and I were so proud of what you built, we forgot to tell you we were proud of who you were. The company became your identity because we only ever talked about your achievements, never your happiness." Diane felt tears sliding down her face. "I don't even know if I'm happy, Mom. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I feel empty inside." "What happened in Chicago, sweetheart?" So Diane told her. About the delayed flight and the little girl who asked why she was alone. About Marcus and his quiet strength and his devastating wisdom. About Evelyn and her no-nonsense love. About sitting in a boardroom that morning and realizing she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt genuinely happy. "And now I'm sitting on a stranger's back porch, except they don't feel like strangers anymore, and I just canceled a week of meetings because I don't want to go back to being who I was yesterday." Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember when you were 8 and you wanted to quit piano lessons?" The question seemed to come from nowhere. "What? You came to me crying, saying Mrs. Henderson was too strict and you hated practicing, and I told you that you couldn't quit because we'd paid for the full year." "I remember. I kept taking lessons until college." "And did you ever love it?" Diane thought about all those hours at the piano, dutifully practicing scales and sonatas, because that's what was expected. No, I was good at it, but I never loved it. That's what I regret most. Teaching you that commitment meant suffering through things that made you miserable. That quitting was failure instead of wisdom. Her mother's voice strengthened. Diane, if this acquisition doesn't make you happy, don't do it. If running Sterling Healthcare doesn't bring you joy anymore, then stop. Life is too short to spend it being successful and miserable. But I built this company from nothing. And it will survive with or without you. Companies always do. But you only get one life, baby girl. Don't waste it on something that stopped serving you years ago. I'm scared, Diane whispered. I don't know who I am if I'm not the CEO of Sterling Healthcare. Then it's time to find out. And, Diane, whatever you decide, your father and I love you, not your company or your achievements. You, the daughter we've missed desperately for 5 years. After they hung up, Diane sat on the porch for a long time, letting the night sounds of the South Side wash over her. Dogs barking in the distance. Music from someone's radio. Children being called inside for bed. The sounds of ordinary life, the kind she'd forgotten existed. The screen door creaked open, and Evelyn stepped out with 2 mugs of tea. Thought you might need this. How did you know? Honey, I raised 3 kids and helped raise Marcus. I know what hard conversations sound like. Evelyn settled into the chair beside her. Want to talk about it? I just apologized to my mother for the first time in 5 years. Good. How'd it feel? Terrifying, liberating, like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. Little bit of both, probably. Evelyn sipped her tea. What else is weighing on you? I'm thinking about walking away from my company. Evelyn didn't look surprised. What's stopping you? Fear, pride, the fact that I've spent 25 years building something that defines who I am. If I'm not the CEO of Sterling Healthcare, who am I? You're Diane. That's enough. Is it? Child, you've been so busy building an empire you forgot to build a life. I watched you at dinner tonight painting that room with us, laughing at Marcus's bad jokes, helping Zoe with her cookie decorating. You were more yourself in those few hours than you probably have been in years. I felt happy. Actually happy. Not successful or accomplished, just happy. Then there's your answer. Evelyn reached over and patted Diane's hand. The things that make us happy are usually simple. Family, friends. Purpose that goes deeper than a bank account. You found that tonight. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Diane looked at this woman who'd known her for less than 24 hours, but seemed to understand her better than people she'd worked with for decades. I don't know, but I think I need to figure it out before I go back to Denver. Then stay. Stay as long as you need. That guest room isn't going anywhere. I can't impose on you like that. It's not imposing if I'm offering. Besides, Zoe's already planning to show you her new school tomorrow. You gonna break that little girl's heart. Diane laughed, despite herself. When you put it like that. Exactly. Now drink your tea and get some sleep. Tomorrow's got enough worries of its own without you borrowing trouble from next week. Upstairs, Diane lay in bed scrolling through her emails. Her CFO was panicking about the delayed acquisition. Her board members were demanding explanations. Her assistant had fielded 17 calls from various stakeholders wanting to know what was happening. And Diane felt nothing but relief at being away from all of it. She opened her laptop and started typing. Not a business email or a board memo. A letter. Dear board members, she wrote, after considerable reflection, I've decided to take a leave of absence from Sterling Healthcare, effective immediately. I will work with our leadership team to ensure a smooth transition, but I can no longer serve as CEO while questioning whether this role serves my best interests or the company's. She stared at those words for a long time. Then she closed the laptop without sending it. Not yet. She needed to be sure. The next morning, Diane woke to Zoe jumping on her bed. "Miss Diane, it's school tour day. Aunt Evelyn made breakfast and Daddy says you're coming with us, and I get to show you everything." "Zoe Marie, get off that poor woman," Evelyn called from downstairs. "But I'm excited." "Be excited on the floor, not on Miss Diane." Zoe bounced down, grinning widely. "Will you come see my new school?" "I'd love to," Diane said, and meant it. They walked to the school, a brick building 3 blocks from Evelyn's house, with a playground full of kids already playing before the bell. Zoe gripped Diane's hand on one side and Marcus's on the other, nervous energy radiating off her small body. "What if nobody likes me?" "They'll love you," Diane said firmly. "You're smart and funny and kind." "But what if they think I'm weird?" "Then they're not worth being friends with," Marcus said. "The right people will see how special you are." The principal, a black woman in her 50s named Mrs. Washington, greeted them warmly. She gave them a tour of the school, showing them the bright classrooms and the library and the art room where student work covered every wall. "This is our first grade wing," Mrs. Washington said. "Ms. Patterson's class is right here. She's wonderful with new students." Through the open door, Diane could see a classroom full of color and creativity. Nothing like the sterile corporate environments she usually inhabited. A young teacher looked up and smiled. "You must be Zoe. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Zoe peeked around Marcus's leg shyly. "Hi. I'm Ms. Patterson. Want to see where you'll sit?" As Zoe ventured into the classroom, Marcus and Diane hung back with Mrs. Washington. "She's had a rough couple of years," Marcus said quietly. "Lost her mother. Moving to a new city. I just want her to feel safe here." "We'll take good care of her," Mrs. Washington promised. "And Mr. Johnson, we have an excellent counselor if Zoe needs someone to talk to about her loss. Many of our students have experienced grief. They have a support group that meets once a week." "Thank you. That means a lot." Mrs. Washington turned to Diane. "Are you Zoe's aunt?" "I'm—" Diane paused, not sure how to explain their relationship. "I'm a friend of the family." "Well, it's lovely that Zoe has so many people supporting her. That's what helps children thrive." After the tour, they walked to a diner for lunch. Zoe chattered excitedly about her new classroom and the other kids she'd met, and how Ms. Patterson had the prettiest smile. "I think I'm going to like it there," Zoe announced. "Can Miss Diane come pick me up sometimes?" Marcus looked at Diane, clearly not sure what to say. Diane felt a flutter of panic and longing in equal measure. "I live in Denver, sweetheart. That's pretty far from your new school." "But you could visit." "Right, Daddy. She could come visit and pick me up and see my artwork on the wall." "We'll see, baby." That's what grown-ups say when they mean no. That's what grown-ups say when they need to figure things out, Marcus corrected gently. After lunch, Marcus had to meet with a supplier about materials for the church restoration. Diane offered to take Zoe to the park so Evelyn could have a quiet afternoon. "You sure?" Marcus asked. "She's a handful." "I'm not a handful," Zoe protested. "I'm a delight." "Who taught you that word?" "Aunt Evelyn. She says I'm a delight, and anyone who doesn't think so has no taste." Marcus laughed. "Of course she did. Diane, seriously, you don't have to." "I want to," Diane said, "if that's okay with you." Something passed between them, an understanding that this was about more than just watching a child for an afternoon. This was Diane stepping into their lives in a real way, taking on actual responsibility instead of just observing from the outside. "Okay," Marcus said. "But fair warning, she'll talk your ear off." "I'm counting on it." At the park, Zoe ran straight for the swings, demanding that Diane push her as high as the sky. As Diane pushed, listening to Zoe's delighted shrieks, she thought about her conversation with her mother, about the letter she'd written but not sent, about the life she'd built that suddenly felt like a prison she'd constructed herself. "Miss Diane," Zoe called down from the swing. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you and my daddy going to fall in love?" Diane nearly stumbled. What? Are you and Daddy going to fall in love, like in the movies? Zoe, that's not we just met. These things are complicated. Aunt Evelyn says love isn't complicated. People just make it complicated because they're scared. Your Aunt Evelyn is very wise. I know. So are you scared? Diane stopped pushing and came around to face Zoe. Yes, I'm very scared. Of what? Of changing my whole life for something that might not work out. Of disappointing people who depend on me. Of being happy and having it taken away. Zoe considered this seriously. My mommy used to say that being scared means something's important. If you're not scared, it doesn't matter enough. Your mommy was right. Do you think Daddy's important enough to be scared about? Diane looked at this 6-year-old who'd somehow become her therapist, her conscience, her unexpected guide to a life she'd forgotten how to live. Yes, I think he is. And you are too. Then you should stop being scared and just do it. That's what Daddy tells me when I don't want to try something new. You're very smart, you know that. Everybody says that. I think I get it from my mommy. She was a teacher, and Daddy says she was the smartest person he ever met. What do you remember about her? Zoe's face took on a dreamy quality. She smelled like vanilla, and she always sang when she made dinner, and she gave the best hugs in the whole world. She'd squeeze really tight and say, I love you to the moon and back. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. I miss her a lot. Oh, sweetheart. Diane knelt beside the swing and pulled Zoe into a hug. Of course you do. Do you think she'd like you? I hope so. I think she would. She always said Daddy needed someone who could keep up with him. Someone smart and strong who wasn't afraid to tell him when he was being dumb. Diane laughed through her own tears. Is he dumb often? Sometimes. Like when he burns spaghetti or forgets to check my backpack for school papers. Zoe pulled back and looked at Diane seriously. But mostly, he's really good. He tries really hard to be both mommy and daddy. Sometimes I hear him crying at night, and I want to help, but I don't know how. I think just loving him is helping. That's what he needs most. Is that what you need too? Someone to love you. The question hit Diane like a physical blow. When had she become so transparent to a 6-year-old? Yes, I think maybe that's exactly what I need. Then you should stay here. We could be your family. It's not that simple, honey. Why not? You don't like Denver. You said you're lonely there. And we're here, and we're not lonely anymore now that you're with us. So you should just stay. I have a company in Denver. Lots of people depending on me. But do they love you? Or do they just need you? Diane felt like she'd been punched in the gut. That's a very perceptive question. Aunt Evelyn says I see things other people don't want to see. She's right about that too. They played for another hour slides and monkey bars and a very serious game of hide and seek that Zoe won every single time. As the sun started to dip lower, they walked back to Evelyn's house, hand in hand. Miss Diane. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for being my friend. I know I'm just a kid, but you're really important to me. Diane stopped walking and knelt down to Zoe's level. You're not just a kid. You're one of the most important people I've met in my entire life. You and your daddy and Aunt Evelyn, you've shown me what really matters. And I will never forget that. Does that mean you're leaving? I don't know yet, but whatever happens, I promise I'll stay in your life, somehow. Promise for real. Not grown-up promise that doesn't mean anything. Promise for real. Zoe threw her arms around Diane's neck and squeezed tight. I love you to the moon and back, she whispered. Diane felt something break open in her chest, something that had been sealed shut for so long she'd forgotten it existed. I love you too, sweet girl. When they got back to the house, Marcus was already there sitting on the porch with Evelyn and a beer. He stood when he saw them coming down the sidewalk. How was the park? Amazing. Zoe ran ahead. Miss Diane pushed me so high on the swings, and we played hide and seek, and I won every time, and we had the best talks. I'm glad, baby girl. Go wash up for dinner. After Zoe went inside, Marcus walked down to meet Diane at the gate. Thank you for taking her. I know she can be a lot. She's perfect, and terrifyingly wise. What did she say? She asked if we were going to fall in love. Marcus's eyebrows rose. She did. She did. And then she told me I should stop being scared and just do it. What did you tell her? That I was working on it. Diane looked up at him. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Okay? I'm thinking about walking away from my company, not selling it, not transitioning gradually, just walking away. And it terrifies me, because that company has been my identity for 25 years. But sitting in that boardroom yesterday, all I could think about was being here, with you and Zoe and Evelyn, living a life that actually means something beyond profit margins and market share. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That's a big decision. It is. And I don't know if I'm making it because it's right, or because I'm lonely and scared, and you all represent something I've never had. Does it matter? What? Does it matter why you're making the decision? If the result is the same, if you end up happier, more fulfilled, more connected to real people and real life, does it matter what your initial motivation was? I guess not. Then stop overthinking it. You've been overthinking your whole life. Maybe it's time to just feel something and follow it. Even if I fail? Especially if you fail. At least you'll have tried. At least you'll have lived. Marcus reached out and took her hand. I can't promise you anything, Diane. I'm a single father with a 6-year-old daughter and a modest income and a whole lot of baggage. I can't give you the life you're used to. I don't want the life I'm used to. That's the whole point. But you need to be sure, because if you do this, if you walk away from everything you've built to take a chance on something new, you can't do it halfway. You can't keep 1 foot in Denver and 1 foot here. You have to jump all the way in. I know. And I need to be honest with you. I'm not looking for a casual thing. I've got Zoe to think about. She's already getting attached to you. If you're not sure you can commit to this to us, then we need to end it now before anyone gets hurt worse. Diane felt the weight of that ultimatum. The safety of her old life beckoned the penthouse, the company, the success that required nothing of her emotionally. But then, she thought about Zoe's face at the park, about Marcus's gentle strength, about Evelyn's fierce love. She thought about feeling happy for the first time in years. I'm jumping, she said, all the way in. Marcus smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. You're sure? I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. He pulled her close and kissed her gentle and tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was standing on the porch clapping. About damn time, she called. Now get in here and help me with dinner. Love don't pay the bills, we still got mouths to feed. They laughed and walked up to the house together hand in hand. And Diane thought about the letter she'd written the night before. Tomorrow she'd revise it, make it final, send it to her board with her resignation. Tonight, she was just going to help make dinner and laugh with her. She tested the word in her mind. Family. Her chosen family. The one she'd found at an airport when she'd been at her loneliest, asked for help by a 6-year-old who refused to let her sit alone. Inside, Zoe was already setting the table. She looked up when they came in together, and her whole face lit up. Does this mean Miss Diane is staying? Marcus looked at Diane. She looked back at him. Then they both looked at Zoe. Yeah, Diane said. I think it does. Zoe's shriek of joy could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She launched herself at both of them, forcing them into a group hug that was awkward and perfect, and everything Diane had been missing. You have to promise, Zoe said fiercely. Promise you'll stay forever." "Forever's a long time, sweetheart," Diane said gently. "I don't care. Promise." Diane looked over Zoe's head at Marcus, saw the hope and fear in his eyes, the vulnerability of a man who'd lost someone he loved and was brave enough to risk loving again. "I promise," Diane said. "Forever." That night, after Zoe had gone to bed and Evelyn had retired upstairs, Diane sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open and Marcus beside her with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet, except for the distant sound of sirens and the hum of the refrigerator. "You don't have to do this tonight," Marcus said softly. "You can sleep on it. If I sleep on it, I'll talk myself out of it." Diane's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I need to do this now while I still have the courage." She pulled up the letter she'd drafted the night before and read through it again. Then she started typing, revising, making it real. "Dear Board of Directors," she read aloud as she wrote. "Effective immediately, I am resigning as CEO of Sterling Healthcare Technologies. This decision comes after careful consideration of both the company's future and my own. I have spent 25 years building this organization, and I am proud of what we've accomplished together. However, I have come to realize that my continued leadership is not in the best interest of the company or myself. I have lost the passion and vision that drove our initial success, and Sterling Healthcare deserves a leader who can bring fresh perspective and renewed energy to the role." Marcus listened without interrupting as she continued. "I will work with the board to ensure a smooth transition over the next 30 days. Jennifer Chen, our current COO, has my full confidence and support as interim CEO. As for the pending MedTech acquisition, I recommend the board proceed without my involvement. My hesitation yesterday was a clear signal that I am no longer the right person to guide this strategic decision." Diane paused, her throat tight. "This is really happening." "You can still change your mind." "I don't want to. That's what scares me." She kept typing. "This company has been my life's work, but it cannot be my life's purpose. I am stepping away to discover what that purpose is, and to build the connections I sacrificed in pursuit of success. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as CEO. I wish you and Sterling Healthcare continued success." She signed it simply, Diane Harper. Her finger hovered over the send button. One click and everything would change. No more corner office, no more board meetings, no more identity wrapped up in being the powerful CEO who'd built an empire from nothing. "Last chance to back out," Marcus said, but there was no judgment in his voice, just understanding. "I'm not backing out." Diane clicked send before she could overthink it. "Oh God, I just quit my job." "You just chose yourself. That's different." "Is it because right now it feels like I just threw away 25 years of work for a man I've known for 3 days and a life I'm not sure I know how to live?" Marcus turned his chair to face her fully. "Then let's be very clear about what's happening here. You didn't do this for me. You did this because you were miserable and lonely and building something that stopped serving you years ago. I'm just the catalyst, the excuse, the final push over the edge you were already standing on. That doesn't make it less terrifying." "No, but it makes it honest." He took her hands. "Diane, I need you to hear me. I'm glad you're staying. I'm glad you're giving us a chance. But you need to do this for yourself first. Figure out who you are without the company. Build a life that makes you happy, whether I'm in it or not. Because if you make me your new identity, if you make Zoe and Evelyn and this house your replacement for Sterling Healthcare, you'll end up just as empty as before." "How do I do that? I don't even know who I am without my job." "Then that's what you figure out. And I'll be here while you do it, but I can't do it for you." Diane felt tears sliding down her face. "When did you get so wise?" 2 years of grief therapy. Best money I ever spent." He wiped her tears with his thumb. "Rachel used to say that the hardest thing about dying wasn't leaving. It was watching me realize I'd built my whole identity around being her husband and Zoe's father. She made me promise that after she was gone, I'd figure out who Marcus was separate from everyone else. Did you? I'm still figuring it out, but I'm further along than I was. And I can tell you this, the days I'm happiest aren't the days I'm being the perfect father or the skilled carpenter. They're the days I'm just being me, flaws and all, and trusting that's enough. I don't know how to trust that I'm enough. Then start small. Tomorrow wake up and don't check your work email. Don't think about the company or the board or any of it. Just be Diane. See what that feels like. Her phone started buzzing. Then buzzing again. And again. Emails and calls flooding in as her board members received her resignation. Diane looked at the screen lighting up with notifications and felt a wave of panic. They're calling, so don't answer. They're going to think I've had a breakdown. Have you? Maybe. I don't know. Diane's phone kept buzzing. This was a mistake. I should call them back. I should explain. Diane. Marcus's voice was firm. Put the phone down. But, put it down, right now. She set it on the table, her hand shaking. The phone continued its frantic dance of notifications. Now listen to me, Marcus said. That phone represents your old life. Every buzz is someone who needs something from you. Someone who wants you to be the CEO they depend on. But you just resigned. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. You survived building a company from nothing. You survived a divorce. You survived 20 years of loneliness. You can survive this. He pushed her phone to the far end of the table. Let them panic. Let them figure it out. For once in your life, let someone else handle the crisis. Diane watched her phone buzzing with increasing urgency and felt something shift inside her. Marcus was right. She'd spent 25 years being available every minute of every day, solving problems, putting out fires, being indispensable. And what had it gotten her? A penthouse she lived in alone, and a bank account she'd never have time to spend. Okay, she said. Okay, I'm not answering. Good girl. They sat there as her phone eventually stopped buzzing. The silence that followed felt enormous. What do I do now? Diane asked quietly. Whatever you want, that's the whole point. I don't know what I want. Then start by figuring out what you don't want. That's easier. Diane thought about it. I don't want to wake up in a hotel room alone. I don't want to spend another evening eating room service in front of my laptop. I don't want to go to another networking event where I smile at people I don't care about while we make small talk about market trends. Good. What else? I don't want to miss another Christmas with my family. I don't want to watch other people have the lives I'm too busy to build for myself. I don't want to be 55 years old and realize I spent my whole life working and forgot to live. Keep going. I don't want to die alone. I don't want to be the cautionary tale people tell about success without happiness. I don't want Zoe to grow up thinking that being successful means being lonely. Diane's voice broke. I don't want to keep pretending I'm fine when I'm falling apart. Marcus pulled her into his arms and let her cry. Not the controlled tears of a CEO maintaining composure, but the ugly gasping sobs of someone finally admitting how broken they'd become. I'm so tired, she said between sobs. I'm so tired of being strong and capable and having all the answers. I'm tired of being alone. Then stop. Just stop. You don't have to be any of those things anymore. But that's who I am. No. That's who you became because you thought you had to. But you don't. Not here. Not with us. Diane cried until she was empty, until there were no more tears left. Marcus held her through all of it, not trying to fix it or make it better, just being present. When she finally pulled back, her face blotchy and her eyes swollen, he smiled at her. Feel better? Surprisingly, yes. Good. Now go splash some water on your face and let's watch something mindless on TV. You've had enough heavy emotions for one day. They ended up on Evelyn's couch, watching old episodes of a baking show. Marcus's arm around her shoulders, both of them critiquing the contestants' techniques. It was normal and domestic, and Diane couldn't remember the last time she'd just sat and watched television without simultaneously answering emails or reviewing reports. "This is nice," she said during a commercial break. "What is this? Just being, not doing anything productive or strategic, just existing. Get used to it. This is what normal people do with their evenings. I don't think I've been normal in 20 years. Well, you're going to learn, starting tomorrow." The next morning, Diane woke to sunlight streaming through the guest room window and the smell of bacon again. But this time, instead of immediately reaching for her phone to check emails, she lay there listening to the sounds of the house waking up. Zoe's footsteps on the stairs, Evelyn's voice reminding someone to wash their hands, Marcus's deeper voice responding. When she finally came downstairs, Zoe was already dressed in her new school uniform, bouncing with nervous energy. "Today's my first day," she announced. "Will you walk me to school, Miss Diane? I'd be honored." They walked together through the September morning, Zoe between Marcus and Diane, holding both their hands. Other parents and children filled the sidewalks calling greetings to each other. Several people welcomed Marcus to the neighborhood and introduced themselves to Diane, assuming she was Zoe's mother or stepmother. Neither Marcus nor Diane corrected them. At the school gates, Zoe suddenly got shy, pressing against Marcus's leg. "What if I don't make any friends?" "You will," Diane said, kneeling down to her level. "You're brave and smart and funny. Give it time." "But what if—" "No what ifs. You're going to walk in there with your head high and show them who Zoe Johnson is. Can you do that?" Zoe nodded, her chin trembling slightly. "And tonight at dinner, you're going to tell us everything. The good parts and the hard parts. We'll celebrate the good and figure out the hard together. Deal?" "Deal." Zoe threw her arms around Diane's neck. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking me to be." They watched Zoe walk through the school gates, turning once to wave before disappearing inside. Marcus let out a long breath. That never gets easier. "She's going to be fine." "I know. Doesn't stop me from worrying." He checked his watch. "I have to head to the church site. What are you going to do today?" "I have no idea. That's both terrifying and exciting." "Welcome to freedom. It's uncomfortable at first, but you get used to it." He kissed her forehead. "Call me if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you at dinner." "I'll be here." After Marcus left, Diane walked back to Evelyn's house alone. Her phone had 43 new messages. She looked at them briefly. Her CFO, her board chairman, her assistant, her lawyer. Everyone wanting to know what she was thinking, whether she'd reconsider what they should do next. She turned off her phone and put it in a drawer. Evelyn was in the kitchen working on a grocery list. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Thanks." Diane poured a cup and sat at the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "How did you know that I needed to make a change?" Evelyn set down her pen and looked at Diane over her reading glasses. "Honey, I've lived 68 years on this earth. I've seen a lot of people, and the ones who are most lost are the ones who look like they have it all together. You walked in here 3 days ago with your expensive clothes and your important job, and all I saw was a woman drowning in her own success. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, I'd be happy." "That's what they tell us, isn't it? Especially women like you, smart, ambitious, capable. They tell us we can have it all if we just work hard enough. But they don't mention that having it all means doing it all alone because there's no time left for people who might slow you down. I chose that life. You chose it because you thought you had to, because society tells women they have to be twice as good to get half the credit. So you worked twice as hard and sacrificed twice as much, and now you're here realizing that the prize you won was a lonely penthouse and a company that will replace you the second you step down. They already have. Jennifer Chen is interim CEO as of this morning. Good for Jennifer. I'm sure she'll do fine. The question is, what are you going to do? I don't know. I've never not had a plan before. Then today's your first lesson in being human. Not having a plan. Not knowing what comes next. Just being present for whatever shows up. Evelyn pushed her grocery list across the table. Start by coming to the market with me. I need someone to carry the heavy bags. The grocery store was nothing like the boutique markets Diane usually shopped at in Denver. This was a neighborhood place where everyone knew everyone, where the butcher called out greetings by name and the produce manager asked about people's families. Evelyn introduced Diane to what felt like half the South Side, each introduction coming with a story about how long they'd known each other or what connection they shared. This is Diane, Evelyn said to the woman working the deli counter. She's staying with me for a while. Marcus's friend. Marcus is back, the woman exclaimed. How's that precious baby of his? Started first grade today. Nervous but excited. They grow up so fast. You tell him Rosa says welcome home. As they moved through the store, Diane realized she was experiencing something she'd never had in Denver community. Not networking contacts or business associates, but actual community. People who cared about each other, not because of what they could offer, but simply because they shared space and time together. You've lived here a long time, Diane said as they loaded groceries into the car. 43 years. Raised 3 kids in that house. Buried my husband from the church 3 blocks away. This neighborhood is my life. Don't you ever want to leave, go somewhere new? Why would I? Everything that matters is right here. Evelyn looked at Diane seriously. I know it's not fancy. Houses need work. Streets need fixing. Crime is higher than it should be. But it's home. Real home. Where people know your name and check on you when you're sick and bring food when you're grieving. I don't have that in Denver. Then maybe Denver isn't where you're supposed to be. That afternoon, Diane helped Evelyn prepare dinner, a process that involved actual cooking from scratch, not ordering takeout or heating up prepared meals. Evelyn taught her how to season chicken properly, how to make gravy from pan drippings, how to tell when cornbread was done by smell rather than timer. You're not bad at this, Evelyn said, watching Diane carefully measure flour. Just need practice. I used to cook, before the company took over. Robert and I would make dinner together on Sundays. It was our thing. What happened? I stopped having Sundays. Then I stopped having any time that wasn't work time. Robert would call me to dinner, and I'd say, just 5 more minutes, and 5 minutes would turn into 2 hours. Eventually, he stopped calling. You miss it. The cooking or the marriage? Both. Diane thought about it while she stirred gravy. I miss the idea of both. The companionship, the routine, someone caring whether I ate dinner or worked through the night. But the actual marriage number, Robert wanted a wife who came home. I wanted a company that mattered more than anything. We were incompatible from the start. And Marcus, what do you want from him? Partnership, equality. Someone who understands that I'm figuring things out and doesn't expect me to have all the answers. Diane set down her spoon. Does that sound realistic, or am I fooling myself? Sounds like you're learning what you need. That's progress. Evelyn tested the gravy and nodded with satisfaction. But Diane, you need to understand something. Marcus is a good man, but he's still healing. Rachel's death broke something in him that's not fully fixed. He'll have hard days. Days when he can't give you what you need because he's barely holding it together for Zoe. I know that. Do you? Because it's easy to romanticize this life when you're fresh out of a lonely penthouse. But real life here isn't a Hallmark movie. It's single fathers crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m. It's bills piling up between paychecks. It's raising a grieving 6-year-old who asks why her mommy had to die. Can you handle that? I don't know, Diane said honestly. But I want to try. I want to be part of something real, even if it's messy and hard. Especially if it's messy and hard. Because perfect and lonely is killing me. Evelyn studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right then. Let's set the table. Marcus and Zoe will be home soon, and I want to hear all about that baby's first day. Zoe came bursting through the door at 5:30, backpack flying, words tumbling over each other in her excitement to share everything. Miss Patterson is so nice, and there's a girl named Sophie who likes the same books as me, and we have a reading corner with beanbags, and at lunch I sat with Sophie and her friend Maya. Not my old friend Maya, a different Maya, and we talked about our favorite colors, and mine is purple, and Sophie's is pink and new, Maya's is green, and we're going to be friends. I can tell. That's wonderful, baby. Marcus swept her up in a hug. I knew you'd make friends. And Miss Diane, you were right. I walked in with my head high, and I wasn't scared at all. Well, maybe a little scared. But I did it anyway. I'm so proud of you, Diane said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised her. Over dinner, Zoe talked non-stop about her day while Marcus and Evelyn asked questions, and Diane just listened, soaking in the warmth of a family meal. This was what she'd given up. This simple, ordinary magic of people who loved each other, sharing food and stories and time. After dinner, while Marcus helped Zoe with her homework and Evelyn cleaned up, refusing Diane's offer to help, Diane's phone buzzed in the drawer where she'd left it. She ignored it. But when it buzzed again, and then again, she finally retrieved it. 17 missed calls, 29 emails, and 1 text from her brother Marcus. Mom called. She's worried. Call her. Diane stepped out onto the back porch and dialed. Diane. Her mother answered on the first ring. Oh, thank God. Your brother said you resigned. Please tell me that's not true. It's true, Mom. But why? You've worked so hard. The company is your life. That's exactly why I had to leave. The company was my life, not part of my life, all of it. And I was dying inside. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Are you in Chicago because of a man? Yes and no. I'm here because I met people who showed me what I was missing. A man is part of that, but he's not all of it. Diane, you can't throw away your career for a relationship. That's not feminist. That's not... Mom, I'm not throwing away my career. I'm reclaiming my life. There's a difference. But what will you do? Who will you be without Sterling Healthcare? And there it was, the question Diane had been asking herself for 3 days. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. And Mom, for the first time in 20 years, I'm not terrified of that answer. I'm excited about it. Her mother started to cry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry we made you feel like success was the only thing that mattered. Your father and I were so proud of what you built, we didn't see what it was costing you. It's not your fault. I made my choices. But we influenced those choices. We taught you that work was the most important thing, that family came second. That's how we lived our lives, and we passed that poison down to you. Diane felt tears on her own cheeks. Then let's stop. Let's do it differently. Can you and Dad come visit next month? Meet Marcus and his daughter. See this life I'm trying to build. We'd love that. Your father will complain about the flight, but we'll be there. After they hung up, Diane stood on the porch, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening. Through the kitchen window, she could see Marcus helping Zoe sound out words from her homework. Evelyn putting away dishes. The simple choreography of ordinary life. This was what she'd been missing. This was what all the money and success and achievement couldn't buy. Marcus came out onto the porch and stood beside her, not saying anything, just being present. They stood like that for several minutes, watching lightning bugs start to appear in the yard. Zoe's asking if you'll read her bedtime story, he finally said. She wants me to. She specifically requested you. Said I do funny voices wrong. Diane laughed and followed him inside. In Zoe's newly painted purple room, she curled up on the bed while Zoe snuggled against her, clutching a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. This was my mommy's favorite book, Zoe said. Daddy says she read it to me when I was too little to remember, but I think I remember her voice. I bet she had a beautiful voice. She did. Daddy says I sound like her when I sing. Zoe opened the book carefully. Will you read chapter 3? That's where Charlotte first talks to Wilbur. Diane read aloud, stumbling over some of the voices, making Zoe giggle at her attempts at a spider's accent. When she finished the chapter, Zoe was fighting to keep her eyes open. Miss Diane. Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to be my new mommy? Diane's breath caught. She looked at Marcus, who was leaning in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. This was Zoe's question to answer or deflect as she chose. Would you want that? Diane asked carefully. I'll always love my first mommy. She's in heaven, watching over me. But Daddy says love doesn't run out. There's always more. So maybe I could have a heaven mommy and a here mommy. Maybe you could. But Zoe, your daddy and I are just starting to get to know each other. We need time to figure things out. Okay. But while you're figuring it out, can you stay here? I like having you here. I like being here. Good. Zoe yawned hugely. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. Diane sat there stroking Zoe's hair until her breathing evened out into sleep. Then she carefully extracted herself and tiptoed to where Marcus waited in the hallway. That was... I know, Marcus said. I'm sorry. I should have prepared you for that question. I'm not sorry. She's amazing. And brave. And she's letting me into her life, even though it means sharing her daddy and risking losing someone else she loves. She trusts easily. It's wonderful and terrifying. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be a partner or a stepmother or whatever this is becoming. I'm going to make mistakes. Probably big ones. So am I. But I want to try. I want to build this life with you and Zoe and Evelyn and this neighborhood and all of it. The messy, complicated, real version. Not some fantasy of what I think it should be. Marcus pulled her close. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. Starting with tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Saturday. Farmer's market with Evelyn in the morning. Painting trim in the church basement in the afternoon. Movie night with Zoe in the evening. Completely ordinary. Completely perfect. I can't wait, Diane said, and realized she meant it. For the first time in 25 years, she was excited about an ordinary weekend. No board meetings, no corporate emergencies, no pressure to be anyone other than exactly who she was. Just Diane. Learning to live, learning to love, learning that sometimes the biggest success is admitting you've been chasing the wrong dream and having the courage to start over. And it had all started with a little girl who'd asked one simple question. Why are you alone? Diane wasn't alone anymore, and she never would be again.